A ship and its crew vanished into the calm Pacific, leaving no debris and no distress call. This is the enduring enigma of the Devil's Sea, a patch of ocean so infamous it's called the Pacific's own Bermuda Triangle. By the end of this, you will understand the terrifying truth behind centuries of disappearances, separating chilling legend from even more chilling reality. We will explore ancient dragon myths, government investigations that ended in tragedy, and the violent natural forces that could swallow a vessel in seconds. What is it about this particular stretch of water that fuels such profound and lasting fear? This mysterious region has a precise and chilling address on the map. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle, is a vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean located directly off the eastern coast of Japan. Its boundaries are often described as a rough triangle connecting 3 points: the Japanese mainland near Tokyo, the remote Bonin Islands to the southeast, and a point far out in the open Pacific. This forms a zone of water nearly as large as the entire state of California, a staggering scale for a place of such concentrated mystery. While its Atlantic cousin, the Bermuda Triangle, has captured the Western imagination, the Devil's Sea holds an equally powerful and ancient grip on the cultures of East Asia. The two share an eerie parallel reputation. Both are infamous for the unexplained vanishings of ships and aircraft, often without any trace or distress signal. But the lore of the Devil's Sea runs much deeper into history. Its ominous names are not modern inventions born from newspaper headlines. They are rooted in centuries of seafaring tradition and fear. The name Dragon's Triangle comes directly from ancient Japanese and Chinese legends that spoke of great dragons or ryu living in the palaces beneath the waves. Fishermen told tales of these colossal creatures rising from the depths to drag entire boats down into the abyss. The name Devil's Sea is a more recent translation of that same profound dread, a label that perfectly captures the region's reputation as a place where the ocean itself seems malevolent, where normal rules of navigation and physics are said to simply not apply. So before we examine a single modern disappearance, we must understand that this area was feared long before steel-hulled ships ever sailed its waters. The legend was already waiting. The fear of this place is not measured in decades but in centuries. Long before radar or radio, sailors whispered warnings about the stretch of ocean east of Japan. Japanese folklore is rich with tales of yurei-fune or ghost ships, vessels found drifting with no crew, their sails tattered and holds empty, as if every soul aboard had simply vanished into the mist. These stories often centered on the Dragon's Triangle, a place where the sea could swallow a fishing boat whole and return it years later as a silent, haunted shell. One persistent legend speaks of a phantom vessel called the Kaiyo Maru, a ghostly sighting said to foretell violent storms and certain doom for any who see it. These were not just campfire tales, they were practical maritime warnings passed from one generation of fishermen to the next. Avoid that water. Do not sail there when the fog is thick. The dragons are hungry. This deep cultural memory set the stage for the very real tragedies that would follow. As the age of sail gave way to steamships and better record-keeping, the disappearances did not stop, they simply became documented. In the late 19th century, a Japanese warship, the Ryusei Maru, vanished without a trace in the triangle with over 200 souls on board. Searchers found nothing. Then, in the early 1900s, a large freighter named the Kaiyo Maru No. 5 met a similar fate. These were not small fishing smacks, these were substantial vessels, lost in an era when such events were becoming rarer due to improved technology. Each confirmed incident layered itself upon the ancient myth, transforming vague superstition into a growing dossier of maritime terror. The Dragon's Triangle was no longer just a legend of the deep, it was a charted hazard with a body count. This grim historical foundation, a blend of enduring folklore and verified early tragedies, created the perfect conditions for what was to come. When the 20th century accelerated, bringing with it advanced ships, aircraft, and global communication, the Devil's Sea was ready to write its most infamous chapter. The 20th century's technological progress seemed powerless against the Dragon's Triangle. In the years following World War II, as Japan rebuilt and its fishing fleets ventured further into the Pacific, the disappearances began again with a terrifying regularity. This was no longer the age of sail and superstition. This was the modern era of radio communication, steel hulls, and detailed maritime logs. Yet the sea east of Japan kept claiming victims, and the pattern was always the same, a profound and unsettling silence. Fishing trawlers, vital to the nation's recovery, would set out from harbors like Yezu and Shigama with full crews. They would radio in their positions and catches, business as usual. Then contact would simply cease. No frantic mayday call, no signal of engine trouble, no warning of a sudden storm. The boats and the men aboard them vanished from the radar and from the face of the earth. One of the most chilling cases from this era involved a vessel called the Kaiyo Maru. In the early 1950s, this ship was found drifting completely empty in the heart of the Devil's Sea. Its lifeboats were still secured in their davits. The engine was off, but there was no sign of damage or struggle. A half-eaten meal sat on the galley table, and the crew's personal belongings were still in their quarters. It was as if every single person on board had been plucked from the deck in an instant and carried away. This was not a sinking, this was an erasure. Stories like this spread panic through coastal communities. Wives and mothers waited at docksides for boats that would never return. Newspaper headlines began to speak of the Mono Yumi, the Devil's Sea, with a grim familiarity. The local legend was now a local crisis, a series of front-page tragedies that demanded an explanation beyond angry dragons. The sheer number of incidents in such a short span, all following that eerie pattern of silent disappearance, could not be ignored. The mystery had outgrown its folkloric roots and was now capturing the attention of scientists, journalists, and a government that felt compelled to act. This wave of post-war vanishings set the stage for something unprecedented, a formal, official investigation into the supernatural. The most definitive proof of the Devil's Sea's danger came from a ship sent to disprove it. In the autumn of 1952, the Japanese government could no longer ignore the mounting pressure. The fishing industry was terrified, families were grieving, and the ancient superstitions were gaining modern credibility. Something had to be done. The authorities commissioned a research expedition, tasking a vessel called the Kaiyo Maru No. 5 with a clear and scientific mission to sail directly into the heart of the Dragon's Triangle and gather concrete data. This was no old fishing trawler. It was a modern, well-equipped research ship staffed by a crew of 31, including seasoned sailors and trained scientists. Their goal was to demystify the region, to search for underwater volcanoes, measure strange magnetic fields, or identify any other natural explanation for the disappearances. The irony was both profound and tragic. They were setting out to solve a mystery, and in doing so, they would become the mystery's most compelling and official piece of evidence. The Kaiyo Maru No. 5 departed on its fateful voyage with every expectation of return. For several days, radio communications were routine, reporting weather conditions and scientific readings. Then, on September 24th, a final, cryptic message was received. The crew reported encountering a strange, luminous phenomenon on the water's surface, something that defied their immediate explanation. After that transmission, there was only silence. No distress signal followed. No life rafts were ever spotted. A massive search and rescue operation scoured thousands of square miles of ocean. They found nothing, not a single piece of debris, not a life jacket, not an oil slick. The ship, its 31 crew members, and all of its advanced scientific equipment had been utterly erased from the face of the Pacific. This event sent a shockwave through Japan and the international maritime community. A government ship on an official mission to investigate the paranormal had been consumed by the very phenomenon it sought to study. It was a chilling twist that transformed the Devil's Sea from a regional superstition into a documented and credible maritime hazard. The loss of the Kaiyo Maru No. 5 did not provide answers, it only deepened the questions, cementing the triangle's reputation as a place where science itself could vanish without a trace. The loss of the Kaiyo Maru No. 5 created a vacuum, and into that void rushed a torrent of speculation far stranger than any government report. When official science fails to provide an answer, the human imagination eagerly constructs its own. The most ancient of these explanations has always been the dragon. For centuries, Japanese folklore described the Ryu not merely as beasts, but as intelligent, wrathful deities of the deep, capable of conjuring storms and pulling ships to a watery grave. In the modern context, these legends have been reinterpreted. Could the dragons be a primitive explanation for something else? Some suggest they were metaphors for giant, unknown sea creatures, colossal squid, or even surviving prehistoric reptiles like the plesiosaur, whose sudden surfacing could capsize a vessel. Others see the dragon as a symbol for the sea itself, a personification of its unpredictable and deadly fury. The persistence of this myth speaks to a fundamental need to give a face and a name to a formless, terrifying force. But the 20th century brought new myths for a new age. As flying saucers entered the global consciousness, they found a perfect home in the Devil's Sea. Theorists proposed that the triangle was not a graveyard but a hidden airport. They speculated about vast, underwater alien bases built within the deep trenches off Japan's coast. The sudden, silent disappearances were not accidents but abductions. Ships and planes were being taken, either for study or because they strayed too close to a secret extraterrestrial operation. The eerie lack of debris was cited as proof, suggesting a technology that could disintegrate or teleport entire objects. This idea gained traction because it mirrored the pattern of vanishings in the Bermuda Triangle, creating a global narrative of cosmic mystery. Even more mind-bending are the theories that abandon physics altogether. Some propose the Devil's Sea sits atop a natural vortex, a swirling gateway to another dimension or a different time. A ship sailing into such a zone might not sink, but simply slip sideways out of our reality, explaining why no wreckage is ever found. Others talk of temporary breaches in the fabric of space-time where the rules of navigation dissolve. One moment you are in the Pacific Ocean in the year 1952, the next you are somewhere or someone else entirely. These ideas are compelling not for their evidence but for their finality. They offer an explanation so complete that it leaves no room for further questions. Why do these supernatural theories hold such powerful appeal, even in our age of satellites and deep-sea submersibles? The answer lies in the nature of the mystery itself. A storm, however violent, leaves a trail. A mechanical failure usually allows for a distress call. The Devil's Sea offers none of that. It delivers absolute clean vanishings. This total absence of data is deeply unsettling to the logical mind. Faced with a perfect blank, we are driven to fill it. Dragons, aliens, and dimensional rifts become narrative placeholders, stories we tell to cover a silence that is more frightening than any monster. They transform a random, meaningless tragedy into a plot with actors and purpose, however sinister. This human compulsion to narrate the unexplainable is perhaps the oldest and most enduring force in the entire Devil's Sea saga, a psychological current that runs even deeper than the Pacific trenches. But what if the Devil's Sea is not a singular anomaly, but part of a much larger, more terrifying pattern? In the 1970s, a biologist and writer named Ivan T. Sanderson looked at the global map of mysterious disappearances and saw a chilling geometric design. He proposed that our planet is dotted with specific, symmetrical points he called vile vortices. According to Sanderson, these are 10 specific zones, 5 located along the Tropic of Cancer and 5 along the Tropic of Capricorn, spaced at roughly equal distances around the globe. The Devil's Sea and the Bermuda Triangle were not random horrors. They were 2 points in this precise alignment. The other vortices included places like the Algerian megaliths in the Sahara, the Mohenjo-Daro ruins in Pakistan, and a desolate point in the Pacific east of Easter Island. Sanderson theorized that these were not locations of supernatural activity, but of profound natural instability. He suggested they might be spots where the Earth's magnetic field behaved erratically or where gravitational forces went strangely awry. In his view, these electromagnetic or gravitational irregularities could cause navigational instruments to spin wildly, fog to form instantly, or even create sudden, catastrophic holes in the ocean surface. This theory was compelling because it offered a scientific-sounding framework for the unexplainable. It connected disparate mysteries under one grand, global hypothesis. The idea of vile vortices captured the public imagination and became a cornerstone of paranormal research, suggesting that our planet itself has built-in traps, places where the normal rules of physics temporarily break down. However, the scientific community largely dismissed Sanderson's theory. Critics pointed out that his vortices were not based on measurable geophysical data, but on a selective collection of strange stories. The locations themselves are not perfectly symmetrical, and many of the sites he listed, like ancient ruins, have no higher incidence of modern disappearances than anywhere else. The vast, empty stretches of ocean, they argued, naturally see more lost vessels simply because there is more ocean to get lost in. Yet, despite its shaky scientific footing, the vile vortex theory endures. Its lasting power lies not in its accuracy, but in its ambition. It attempts to impose order on chaos, to find a reason behind the randomness of tragedy. It tells us that if these terrible places are part of a pattern, then perhaps they can be understood, mapped, and maybe even avoided. This search for a logical, if unproven, system behind the Devil's Sea leads us inevitably to a more tangible question. If it's not dragons, aliens, or global vortices, what real forces could make a ship vanish without a single cry for help? The ocean floor here is not a peaceful, sandy plain. It is a battlefield of titanic geological forces. To understand the Devil's Sea, we must look not to the sky for aliens, but straight down into the crust of the Earth itself. This region sits directly on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a horseshoe-shaped belt that encircles the ocean basin and is home to the vast majority of the world's earthquakes and volcanoes. The seafloor east of Japan is one of the most geologically violent places on the planet. Here, the Pacific tectonic plate is being forced beneath the continental plate carrying Japan, a process called subduction. This creates some of the deepest ocean trenches in the world, plunging down over 6 miles in places. But more importantly for sailors, it creates incredible instability. The grinding and melting of rock deep underground fuels countless underwater volcanoes known as seamounts. Many of these are not dormant, they are active and unpredictable. An underwater volcanic eruption is a catastrophic event for any vessel above it. Imagine sailing over what seems like calm, deep water. Without warning, the sea begins to churn and boil as superheated lava meets cold ocean. The eruption can blast a column of water and rock high into the air, swamping or capsizing a ship instantly, but the direct eruption is only one danger. These volcanoes release vast clouds of volcanic gases, including carbon dioxide. In high concentrations, this gas can be deadly. A ship sailing into an invisible, bubble-rich plume of carbon dioxide would suddenly find itself floating in water that has lost its buoyancy. The aerated sea can no longer support the vessel's weight, causing it to sink like a stone in carbonated water. Even more insidiously, the crew would be overcome by the toxic gas itself, falling unconscious before they could send a distress call. This explains the ghost ships found drifting with meals still on the table, the crew succumbing to an invisible, odorless killer from the deep. Beyond sudden eruptions, the volcanic activity creates other lethal phenomena. Hydrothermal vents spew out boiling, chemical-laden water that can create localized patches of ocean at near boiling temperatures. A steel hull passing over such a spot could suffer catastrophic thermal stress, cracking open and flooding in minutes. Furthermore, the constant seismic activity can trigger massive underwater landslides on the steep slopes of the trenches and seamounts. These landslides can generate devastating tsunami waves, but they can also create powerful, localized turbulence that could drag a ship under. The violent geology of the Ring of Fire provides a suite of terrifyingly plausible explanations. It offers forces capable of destroying a vessel with such speed and finality that no radio call is possible, and it scatters any wreckage across a chaotic, mountainous seabed miles below, far beyond the reach of conventional search efforts. The dragons of legend may have been a personification of this very real subterranean fury. But the seafloor holds another secret weapon, one that requires no volcanic eruption at all. Deep beneath the sediments of many continental shelves, trapped under immense pressure and cold temperatures, lie vast deposits of methane hydrate. Picture a strange, icy slush, but one that burns. This is a crystalline solid where molecules of methane gas are locked inside cages of frozen water. These deposits are not static, they are a geologic powder keg. If the seafloor is disturbed by a small earthquake, a landslide, or even a gradual warming of the ocean current, this frozen methane can destabilize in an instant. The solid hydrate dissociates, transforming from ice back into a colossal volume of gas. The result is a catastrophic, explosive eruption from the seabed. A giant bubble, hundreds of feet across, rockets toward the surface. For any ship caught above, the consequences are not from fire, but from a fundamental betrayal of the water itself. The physics here are as simple as they are terrifying. A ship floats because the water it displaces weighs more than the ship itself. But when a titanic plume of methane gas erupts, it turns a dense column of seawater into a frothing, aerated mixture. The water suddenly loses its density. It can no longer provide the necessary buoyant support. The vessel doesn't just take on water, it simply ceases to float. It loses all lift and plunges straight down through the froth, sinking in mere seconds. There would be no time for a distress call, no dramatic listing to one side, just an abrupt and vertical descent into the abyss. The violent churn of the eruption would then scatter any debris, leaving the ocean's surface deceptively calm and empty minutes later. This theory powerfully explains the signature of the Devil's Sea vanishings, the sudden and silent nature of the event. But is it the prime suspect here? Many oceanographers point out that while methane hydrate deposits are common in the Atlantic, particularly in the Bermuda Triangle region, they are far less prevalent in the specific geologic setting of the Devil's Sea. The seafloor off Japan is dominated by deep trenches and volcanic arcs, not the broad, sediment-rich continental shelves where these hydrates typically form. The primary destructive forces in the Pacific's Dragon's Triangle are more likely the direct and violent ones of volcanism and seismicity. The methane hydrate hypothesis, while a compelling and scientifically valid mechanism for sudden sinkings, may be a case of the right answer for the wrong ocean. It reminds us that the sea has many ways to kill, and different graveyards may have different executioners. So if the geology provides such plausible tools for destruction, why does the mystery feel so unresolved? The answer may lie not on the ocean floor, but in the human mind and in the very nature of the sea itself. The ground beneath the Devil's Sea is never truly still. This region is a seismic crossroads, a place where not one, but multiple tectonic plates collide in a slow-motion car crash of continental proportions. The immense Pacific Plate is diving westward, grinding beneath the Philippine Sea Plate and the Okhotsk Plate, which in turn jostle against the Eurasian Plate. This complex, multi-plate convergence makes the seafloor east of Japan arguably the most seismically hyperactive zone on the entire planet. The energy released here is not a rare event, it is a constant, simmering threat. While we often picture earthquakes as land-based disasters, their undersea counterparts are the true hidden architects of maritime terror. A sudden, violent shift along a fault line miles beneath the waves does not just shake the seabed, it unleashes a chain of catastrophic events directly into the water column above. The first and most direct danger is the earthquake wave itself. Unlike a tsunami, this is a rapid, jarring vibration that passes through the ocean. For a ship, it would feel as if the sea itself had turned to concrete and was being hammered from below. Masts could snap, hulls could crack, and machinery could be torn from its mountings, all within seconds. A vessel caught directly over the epicenter could be literally shaken apart before the crew even understood what was happening. But the earthquake is often just the opening act. Its true destructive legacy travels outward at the speed of a jet airliner in the form of a tsunami. When the seafloor lurches upward or drops down during a quake, it displaces an unimaginable volume of water. This energy forms a series of waves that, in the deep ocean, are barely noticeable, perhaps just a gentle, long-period swell a foot or two high. Their power is hidden, compressed into the water column. It is only as these waves approach the shallower coastal shelves that they rear up into the walls of water we recognize. However, for a ship in the open ocean, the danger is different and equally deadly. As a tsunami wave train passes, it creates powerful, chaotic currents that can reach down hundreds of feet. These are not surface waves to ride over, they are massive rivers moving within the sea itself. A vessel could be spun violently, its steering useless or caught in a conflicting current that pulls it under. The ocean would become a raging, directionless maelstrom with no visible storm in the sky. And sometimes the earthquake triggers a secondary event even more localized and immediate, a submarine landslide. The steep, unstable slopes of the deep trenches and seamounts are covered in eons of accumulated sediment. A strong tremor can liquefy this material, sending billions of tons of mud and rock cascading down into the abyss. This underwater avalanche does two things. First, it can generate its own highly localized tsunami, a single massive wave that forms and strikes within minutes, offering no warning to a nearby ship. Second, the landslide itself creates a powerful downward suction, a turbulent vortex that could drag anything caught above it down into the darkness. So we have a recipe for instant, silent catastrophe. A powerful undersea quake strikes. It violently shakes a ship, potentially breaking its back. Within minutes, before any radio operator can reach the microphone, the resulting tsunami currents or a landslide-induced wave engulf the vessel, pulling it and any debris deep into the chaotic, mountainous terrain of the seafloor. The surface calms, leaving no oil slick, no life rafts, just an empty expanse of water that holds its secrets miles below. This is not speculation, it is documented geology in one of Earth's most volatile zones. The same forces that built the islands of Japan are perfectly capable of dismantling a steel ship in a matter of moments. The ocean here can steal your sense of direction as easily as it can swallow a ship. In an age before satellite navigation, a sailor's most trusted tool was his magnetic compass, a simple needle pointing faithfully north, but in the Devil's Sea, that trust could be fatally misplaced. The seafloor is littered with the remains of ancient volcanic activity, vast formations of basalt rock that solidified millions of years ago. When this rock cooled, it locked in the orientation of the Earth's magnetic field from that exact moment in geologic time. The problem is, our planet's magnetic poles are not fixed. They wander and even flip entirely over immense timescales. So a volcanic seamount on the bottom of the Pacific might be magnetized to a north that no longer exists. These formations create localized magnetic anomalies, invisible pockets where a compass needle is pulled not toward true north, but toward the magnetic ghost in the rock below. For a captain plotting a course through thick fog or a moonless night, this deviation could be subtle at first, just a few degrees off. But over the course of a long voyage, a small error in heading becomes a massive error in position. A ship believing it is sailing safely parallel to the coast might actually be steering itself unknowingly directly toward a treacherous reef or into the path of a raging current. The crew, confident in their instruments, would have no reason to send a distress call as they sailed calmly into catastrophe. This isn't theoretical. Navigators' logs from the region have long noted compass irregularities, often blaming them on bad equipment or poor technique. We now understand the sea itself was the saboteur. Combine this with another atmospheric quirk of the area, the sudden and dense sea fogs that can roll in with startling speed. A disoriented crew, their compass spinning uselessly, enveloped in a blinding white silence, would be utterly lost in a matter of minutes. They could be driven onto rocks by a current they didn't know they were in, or simply sail in desperate circles until fuel or hope ran out. The silent vanishings begin to make a terrible, logical sense, not as supernatural abductions, but as a cascade of navigational failures. The sea first steals your way, then it takes your ship. But the greatest sculptor of this seascape is not below, it is flowing right through it. The Devil's Sea is dominated by one of the most powerful ocean currents on Earth, the mighty Kuroshio. Think of it as the Pacific's own Gulf Stream, a vast, warm river within the ocean, but one that moves with a staggering and relentless force. Born in the tropics near the Philippines, the Kuroshio sweeps northward past Taiwan, accelerating as it funnels between islands. By the time it reaches the eastern coast of Japan, it is a true maritime juggernaut. This current can flow at speeds exceeding 4 knots, which may not sound fast on land, but in the open ocean it is a torrent. That is faster than many sailboats can travel, a relentless push of trillions of gallons of water every minute. Its width is measured in dozens of miles, and its influence extends hundreds of feet down into the depths. For a sailor, the Kuroshio is a double-edged sword. Used correctly, it can speed a voyage dramatically, a natural highway across the Pacific. But for a vessel in distress or simply adrift, it becomes an inescapable prison wall, a silent force that dictates fate. This is where the forensic nightmare of the Devil's Sea truly begins. When a ship suffers a catastrophic event, be it a sudden hull breach from seismic shock or a crew overcome by volcanic gas, it does not simply sink straight down and stay put. The moment it loses power or steerage, it becomes a leaf in a hurricane. The Kuroshio seizes it. A disabled ship, or even just its scattered debris field, is instantly caught in this immense watery conveyor belt. Within hours, it can be carried dozens of miles from its last known position. Within a day, it could be 100 miles away, its location a complete mystery to any rescue plane or ship searching the original coordinates. The current doesn't just move wreckage, it disperses it. A life raft might be swept north toward the icy waters off Hokkaido, while a piece of decking drifts east into the empty vastness of the open Pacific. This scattering effect explains why search and rescue missions so often find nothing. They are looking in the wrong place almost from the very start, chasing a ghost that is being relentlessly carried away by a river they cannot see. The Kuroshio also shapes the sea itself, creating treacherous secondary effects. Where this warm current meets colder coastal waters, it generates dense, rolling fogs that can appear without warning, blinding navigators. The collision of water masses also breeds sudden, violent eddies and whirlpools, smaller than legend describes but powerful enough to cripple a struggling vessel. So the current acts as both executioner and cleanup crew. It can deliver the final blow to a ship already weakened by geological forces, and then it efficiently removes all evidence, carrying the tragedy far out to sea and erasing it from human investigation. The Kuroshio is the reason the Devil's Sea feels like a magician's trick, a place where things vanish not into thin air but into a boundless, moving blue desert. The power of the Kuroshio current is matched only by the fury that builds above it. This region is a birthplace for monsters, the spawning ground for some of the most powerful typhoons on Earth. These are not ordinary storms, they are heat engines fueled by the Kuroshio's warm waters, colossal systems that can explode from tropical disturbance to Category 5 fury in less than a day. For centuries, this rapid intensification was a death sentence for ships at sea. A vessel might be sailing under clear skies with only a distant line of clouds on the horizon. Within hours, the barometer would begin a terrifying plunge. The wind would rise from a breeze to a scream, whipping the sea into a landscape of moving mountains. Waves could reach heights of 50 feet or more, not rolling swells but sheer, collapsing walls of green water capable of breaking a ship's back with a single impact. The rain would fall not in drops but in a horizontal, blinding sheet, reducing visibility to zero. In this maelstrom, a radio antenna would be the first thing torn away, severing any last hope of calling for help. The storm itself would become a deafening roar, drowning out all other sound. A ship caught in the open by one of these typhoons had its fate decided by physics and luck, often with little of the latter. The sheer violence of such a system explains a great many historical losses, where a vessel simply failed to outrun a storm that modern satellites would see forming from days away. But the atmosphere holds an even more insidious and sudden weapon, one that leaves almost no time for a thought, let alone a distress call. Imagine a patch of ocean, calm and flat under a seemingly benign sky. Without a single cloud to warn them, a ship is struck by an invisible hammer from above. This is the terrifying reality of a microburst. It begins high in the atmosphere, where a shaft of rain-cooled air plunges downward with incredible force. When this concentrated column of wind hits the ocean surface, it explodes outward in all directions. The effect is like tipping a giant, invisible bowl of wind onto the sea. For a ship at the center of this impact zone, the experience would be catastrophic and instantaneous. One moment calm, the next the vessel is hit by a wind shear of over 100 miles per hour, not as a sustained gust but as a sudden crushing blow. A microburst can create a localized sea state of utter chaos, with waves erupting from multiple directions at once. A ship could be rolled onto its side and capsized in a matter of seconds before the captain could even shout an order. The entire event might last less than a minute, after which the wind vanishes and the sea begins to calm, leaving behind no trace of the violence except for a spreading patch of foam and an empty horizon. This phenomenon, while rare, is a documented killer of aircraft and is believed to have claimed surface vessels as well. It provides a near-perfect explanation for some of the most baffling Devil's Sea accounts, where ships vanished in reportedly good weather. A microburst offers no forecast, no build-up, and almost no chance of survival. It is the meteorological equivalent of a sniper's bullet. A single, precise strike from a clear blue sky that leaves the ocean to silently clean up the evidence. Yet the most common monster in these waters has always been human fallibility. For all the talk of dragons and vortices, we must confront a far more ordinary and perhaps more frightening possibility. The vast majority of maritime disasters in any ocean stem from a simple combination of human error and mechanical failure. The Devil's Sea, for all its legendary terror, is also one of the busiest shipping lanes and most intensive fishing grounds on the planet. Thousands of vessels cross its waters every year, from colossal container ships to small, family-operated fishing boats. With that sheer volume of traffic, accidents are not just possible, they are statistically inevitable. The mystery isn't why ships disappear here, but why we are so quick to dismiss the obvious explanations in favor of the supernatural. Consider the typical fishing trawler operating out of a Japanese port in the mid-20th century. These were often aging vessels, worked hard day after day, with maintenance sometimes deferred in the rush to bring in the next catch. A worn propeller shaft could snap. A fatigued weld on the hull could finally give way after one too many encounters with a heavy sea. An engine, pushed beyond its limits for years, could seize without warning. In the open ocean, a single critical failure can cascade into catastrophe in minutes. A small leak becomes a flooding hold. A stalled engine leaves a boat dead in the water, at the mercy of the very currents we just discussed. Without power, the radios go silent. The ship becomes a drifting coffin, slowly succumbing to the waves. Now add the human element, the pressure to provide. Fishing boats chasing dwindling stocks were notoriously overloaded. A deck piled high with catch lowers the vessel's center of gravity, making it dangerously unstable. A sudden large wave, a sharp turn to avoid debris, and a top-heavy boat can roll over in a heartbeat. It would sink so quickly that lifeboats would be impossible to launch. The crew would have no time to do anything but struggle for their lives. This isn't speculation, it is the grim, documented reality of commercial fishing, one of the most dangerous professions in the world. Then there is simple navigational mistake. Before satellite positioning, a captain relying on celestial navigation could miscalculate his position by miles, especially in the overcast skies common to the region. He might believe he is in safe, deep water when he is actually bearing down on one of the countless, uncharted underwater seamounts that rise like daggers from the abyss. A hull torn open on submerged rock leads to a swift and fatal flooding. The initial impact might even damage the radio antenna, severing that last lifeline before anyone can speak. We must also consider the psychological weight of the legend itself. A crew sailing into the Dragon's Triangle is already primed for fear. In a moment of crisis, with instruments behaving strangely due to magnetic anomalies and a thick fog closing in, panic can be as deadly as any wave. Poor decisions are made under stress. A life raft is launched incorrectly. The crew abandons a ship that might have stayed afloat. The sea does the rest. So when we look at the list of vanished ships, how many were claimed by a force as old as seafaring itself? Simple bad luck compounded by imperfect technology and human limitation. The silence of the Devil's Sea may not be the silence of a supernatural event, but the profound and final silence that follows any ordinary disaster in a very lonely and very deep ocean. While geology and weather offer terrifying natural explanations, the sea has always concealed a more familiar predator. Human greed and violence have stalked these shipping lanes for as long as ships have carried valuable cargo. To dismiss the Devil's Sea as purely a force of nature is to ignore a darker, more calculated possibility. Piracy in Asian waters is not a relic of the past, it is a persistent and modern threat that adapts with the times. The post-war period in the Pacific, a time of immense economic hardship and political reorganization, created perfect conditions for maritime crime. Smaller fishing trawlers, often operating alone and far from patrol routes, would have been tempting targets. A pirate vessel, perhaps disguised as another fishing boat, could approach under a guise of camaraderie or distress. Once close, armed men could board swiftly, overwhelming a small crew. The goal might not have been to sink the ship, but to steal it. The vessel, its catch, and any equipment could be repurposed or sold on the black market. The crew presented a problem: witnesses who could not be set free. The grim logic of piracy often led to a single, brutal outcome to ensure silence. A ship seized in this manner would not send a distress call. It would simply cease to exist in the official record, its identity painted over, its crew vanished into the depths. This scenario transforms a supernatural mystery into a human tragedy. It explains the lack of debris, not because the ship was vaporized, but because it was taken. It accounts for the silent radios cut or disabled during the assault, and it fits a pattern seen in other piracy hotspots around the world, where ships and their crews disappear, only for the vessel to reappear months later under a new name and flag, its previous life erased. The political instability following the Second World War adds another layer of possibility. The waters east of Japan were a complex arena with shifting boundaries, contested fishing rights, and the lingering shadows of military conflict. A vessel could have strayed into a sensitive area, been seized by a state actor for reasons of security or espionage, and its disappearance covered up as just another tragic accident in the Dragon's Triangle. In this light, the legend becomes a convenient smokescreen, a ready-made supernatural excuse that could obscure very real and very terrestrial crimes. So when we examine the list of missing ships, we must ask a difficult question. How many were victims of the sea's fury, and how many were victims of our own? The ocean's deepest darkness may not lie in its trenches, but in the capacity for cruelty it can conceal. A single book would transform the Devil's Sea from a regional maritime legend into a global phenomenon. In 1989, a best-selling author named Charles Berlitz published a work titled The Dragon's Triangle. For millions of readers in the West, this was their first, electrifying introduction to the Pacific's own Bermuda Triangle. Berlitz was not a scientist or a historian. He was a master storyteller with a famous name, the grandson of the founder of the Berlitz language schools, and he had already found massive success with his earlier book on the Bermuda Triangle. His approach was a potent cocktail of genuine mystery, selective facts, and unbridled speculation. He presented the disappearances of the Kaiyo Maru No. 5 and other vessels not as tragedies to be investigated, but as thrilling evidence of something profoundly unnatural. Berlitz wove together the ancient dragon myths, the vile vortex theory, and tales of ghost ships into a seamless, chilling narrative. He suggested everything from alien bases to time warps, always presenting these ideas not as wild theories, but as compelling possibilities that official sources were ignoring. His method was deceptively persuasive. He would begin with a verifiable fact, a real ship that really vanished. Then he would layer on eyewitness accounts of strange lights or odd compass readings, often from unclear sources. Finally, he would offer a supernatural explanation, presenting it with the same confident tone as the initial fact. The line between documented incident and sensational fiction blurred completely on the page. The result was a page-turner that felt like investigative reporting but read like a science fiction thriller. For the public, it was irresistible. The book flew off shelves, planting the image of a sinister, dragon-guarded triangle in the minds of a whole new audience. It created a feedback loop where the legend fueled book sales and the book sales cemented the legend. Yet within academic and scientific circles, Berlitz faced fierce and immediate criticism. Oceanographers and maritime historians dissected his claims, pointing to glaring inaccuracies. They noted he often misreported dates, exaggerated ship sizes, and cited storms that meteorological records showed never occurred. His use of magnetic anomaly maps was misleading, applying data from one region to another to bolster his case. Critics accused him of cherry-picking stories that fit his thesis while ignoring the vast majority of maritime traffic that passed through the Devil's Sea without incident. They argued he took the real and understandable fears of fishermen and sailors and repackaged them as evidence of the paranormal, doing a disservice both to science and to the memory of those lost at sea. The scientific community largely dismissed his work as pseudoscience, a clever but ultimately hollow confection of myth and mystery mongering. But this criticism, while valid, missed the point of Berlitz's monumental impact. His role was not to be accurate, it was to be compelling. Charles Berlitz did not discover the Devil's Sea, he branded it. He gave it a catchy, marketable name for English speakers, the Dragon's Triangle, and tied it directly to the already famous Bermuda Triangle, creating a sense of a global pattern. He translated a complex, culturally specific Asian legend into a universal language of mystery that the West could understand and consume. In doing so, he permanently cemented the Devil's Sea in the arena of popular culture. After Berlitz, the mystery was no longer confined to Japanese fishing villages or academic papers. It was in airport bookstores, on television documentaries, and in the public imagination worldwide. He proved that a good story, powerfully told, could overshadow a multitude of facts. The legacy of his book is a paradox. It is the reason most people outside of Japan have ever heard of this place, yet it is also the source of many of the exaggerated myths that obscure its more terrifying and more plausible natural truths. Official records tell a very different story from the best-selling books. The Japanese government's position on the Devil's Sea has been consistent, pragmatic, and rooted in maritime safety, not mystery. Following the devastating loss of the research vessel Kaiyo Maru No. 5 in 1952, authorities did not retreat into supernatural speculation. They doubled down on scientific inquiry. That ship's mission itself was a testament to this approach, a state-funded expedition specifically tasked with gathering geological and oceanographic data to explain the disappearances. Its tragic end was not seen as proof of dragons, but as a stark demonstration of the region's extreme and measurable dangers. In the decades since, agencies like the Japan Coast Guard and the Maritime Safety Agency have treated each incident with rigorous standard investigative procedure. When a vessel is reported missing, they deploy patrol ships and aircraft, analyze weather and sea state data, and interview the crews of other ships in the area. Their conclusions, documented in official reports, almost invariably point to identifiable, if formidable, natural causes. A trawler lost in a sudden typhoon that intensified faster than forecasts predicted. A cargo ship likely compromised by structural fatigue in heavy seas. A small boat that may have been overwhelmed by a rogue wave or a rapid current shift. The authorities emphasize the sheer power of the Pacific in this volatile zone, where conditions can deteriorate with terrifying speed, leaving little time for a distress call. They actively caution the public against embracing supernatural theories, arguing that these narratives are not only inaccurate but dangerous. Why? Because belief in an unsolvable, magical danger can lead to complacency. If a disappearance is deemed a paranormal event, it becomes an act of fate beyond prevention or preparation. The government's stance is that this is the opposite of the truth. By focusing on the real risks like unpredictable weather, strong currents, and seismic activity, they promote practical safety measures, better ship design, improved forecasting, and mandatory emergency training. They frame the Devil's Sea not as a cursed triangle, but as a particularly challenging stretch of ocean that demands respect and preparation. From an institutional perspective, the myth has been thoroughly debunked by the simple, sobering weight of data and the repeated lessons written in storm waves and seismic charts. The enduring mystery, then, lies not in the government's files, but in the vast gap between their dry technical reports and the powerful human need for a story that makes the unimaginable seem understandable. Both legends haunt our maps, but their foundations are built on very different ground. A side-by-side look at the Devil's Sea and the Bermuda Triangle reveals a fascinating study in how geography and culture shape a mystery. The similarities are what first capture our attention. Both are defined by a loose, triangular zone of ocean with a terrifying reputation for swallowing ships and planes without a trace. In both places, stories abound of compasses spinning wildly, radios failing, and strange lights dancing in the sky or on the water. These shared traits created a powerful template, a global narrative of cursed geography that writers like Charles Berlitz eagerly connected. Yet the moment we look beneath the surface, the two mysteries diverge dramatically. The most critical difference lies in the bedrock. The Devil's Sea sits squarely on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Its primary weapons are volcanic and seismic, a realm of underwater eruptions, sudden tsunamis, and catastrophic landslides. The Bermuda Triangle, by contrast, rests on a vast, sediment-rich continental shelf. Its most compelling scientific suspect is the explosive release of methane hydrates from the seafloor, a gas eruption that can rob water of its buoyancy in an instant. One is a zone of fire and rock, the other a potential site of gaseous upheaval. Their cultural backstories are equally distinct. The lore of the Dragon's Triangle is ancient, rooted in Japanese and Chinese mythology of undersea dragons and ghost ships, a fear passed down through generations of fishermen. The Bermuda Triangle's modern mythos is younger, often tied to the lost city of Atlantis or tales of alien intervention, ideas popularized in the 20th century. This leads to perhaps the most practical difference, the level of official documentation. The Devil's Sea has a stark, government-stamped tragedy at its core, the confirmed loss of the research vessel Kaiyo Maru No. 5 on a mission to investigate the area. Japan's authorities have consistently acknowledged the region's extreme dangers. The Bermuda Triangle, however, lacks a single, definitive official incident that proves an unnatural cause. Organizations like the United States Coast Guard and the world's leading insurance underwriters do not recognize it as a statistically anomalous hazard, attributing losses to the ordinary perils of a busy shipping lane. So which mystery holds more weight? In terms of sheer geological menace, the Devil's Sea is arguably more demonstrably dangerous. Its volatile seafloor presents a clear and present catalogue of lethal natural forces. The Bermuda Triangle's methane hydrate theory, while scientifically plausible, is less consistently supported by the local geology. Yet when it comes to cultural endurance and global recognition, the Bermuda Triangle is the undisputed champion. It has become a universal shorthand for the unexplained, embedded in films, music, and literature worldwide. The Devil's Sea remains, for many in the West, a more obscure cousin. This contrast tells us something profound. The strength of the evidence and the power of the legend are not the same thing. One triangle terrifies with the concrete fury of the earth itself, while the other captivates with the boundless possibilities of the human imagination. For every vessel that vanished without a trace, there are a few that came perilously close, their crews returning with stories that chill the blood. These are not tales of dragons or alien beams, but of the ocean itself turning against them in ways that defied all logic and experience. One of the most frequently reported phenomena is the sudden, suffocating fog. Sailors describe it not as a gradual mist rolling in, but as a solid, luminous wall of white that materializes in minutes, even under a clear noon sun. Visibility drops to zero, and the world becomes a silent, disorienting void. Compasses begin to swing lazily or spin in complete circles, rendering them useless. Radios crackle with static or die altogether, severing the last link to the world beyond the white. In this silent prison, the only sound is the slap of water against the hull, a constant reminder of the abyss just beyond the rail. Crews speak of a profound, creeping dread, a feeling of being watched by something vast and ancient beneath the keel. This is not superstition in the telling, but a visceral, shared trauma recalled by hardened fishermen who have faced storms without flinching. The sudden fog has a likely scientific explanation. The collision of the warm Kuroshio current with colder coastal waters can generate dense, advection fog with startling speed. The compass failures align perfectly with the known magnetic anomalies from volcanic seabed rock. The radio silence could be caused by atmospheric ionization from nearby, unseen electrical storms or seismic activity. Yet, knowing the science does little to ease the primal fear of being utterly blind and lost in a place with such a grim reputation. Other accounts are harder to dismiss with standard meteorology. There are persistent stories from the 1970s and 80s of sailors witnessing strange, subsurface lights. These were not the bioluminescent glow of plankton, but described as large, geometric patterns of green or white light moving with purpose deep below the waves, sometimes pacing the ship for hours. One captain, interviewed years later, insisted the lights formed a distinct grid pattern, like the lit windows of a submerged city. before winking out and leaving the ocean in Kai black. Another common, terrifying report is of the sea going suddenly, inexplicably flat. Not calm, but flat like a sheet of obsidian glass, devoid of any swell or ripple, as if the very energy of the ocean had been sucked away. In this eerie stillness, engines would cough and stall, as if starved of oxygen, and the air would grow thick and heavy. Then, just as suddenly, the normal swell would return, and the engines would restart on their own. These episodes mirror descriptions of what might happen directly over a large-scale methane hydrate release, where the bubbling gas could temporarily smooth the surface and create a deadly, oxygen-poor environment. They also bear a haunting resemblance to the calm reported before the final transmission of the Kaiyo Maru No. 5. Analyzing these survivor stories requires a careful balance. Many can be mapped directly to the region's fierce natural forces, the fog, the magnetic quirks, the sudden flattening of the sea before a seismic event. They provide a human-scale window into the very real perils that have claimed so many. They are first-hand reports of the Devil's Sea's standard arsenal. But a handful of accounts linger in a grayer area: the structured lights, the feelings of profound temporal disorientation described by some crews, the sense of the ship being held in place by an invisible force. These are the anecdotes that fuel the enduring mystery because they fall just outside the clean lines of oceanographic textbooks. Whether they are the product of extreme stress and heightened fear, misinterpretations of rare natural phenomena, or glimpses of something we do not yet understand, they serve a vital purpose. They remind us that the heart of this mystery is not just in charts and data, but in the lived experience of those who sailed into the white silence and returned, forever marked by what they felt but could not explain. Their stories are the fragile human bridge between the known world and the legend, and they ensure the Devil's Sea is never just a point on a map, but a living, breathing enigma. The ocean's greatest mysteries often shrink under the lens of modern science. In the case of the Devil's Sea, the most powerful demystifying tool is one we now carry in our pockets: the Global Positioning System, or GPS. For millennia, navigation was an art of estimation, using stars, compasses, and dead reckoning, all vulnerable to human error and the sea's magnetic tricks. A captain in the 1950s might have genuinely believed his plotted course kept him in safe waters, when in reality, a subtle compass deviation had sent him miles off track, directly toward a hidden seamount or a raging current. Today, that same captain has a constellation of satellites overhead, providing a real-time, pinpoint location accurate to within a few meters. The ancient problem of getting lost in the Dragon's Triangle has been effectively solved. You always know exactly where you are, and more importantly, exactly where the dangers are charted. This technological revolution extends far beyond navigation. Advanced meteorological satellites now constantly watch the Pacific, mapping sea surface temperatures, tracking cloud formation, and spotting the birth of typhoons days before they reach full strength. A vessel in the Devil's Sea no longer has to fear a storm that appears from a clear blue horizon. Its captain receives detailed forecasts and predicted paths, allowing ample time to alter course and seek shelter. Furthermore, satellite-based automatic identification systems, or AIS, create a live map of maritime traffic. Authorities can monitor every equipped ship's position, speed, and heading in real time. If a vessel stops transmitting or deviates unexpectedly, an alert is triggered immediately, not days later when it fails to return to port. This continuous surveillance has turned the vast, lonely Pacific into a monitored highway, making a silent, unexplained vanishing act nearly impossible. Ship design and construction have also evolved with hard-learned lessons. Modern hulls are stronger, watertight compartments are standard, and emergency communication systems are redundant and satellite-linked, with emergency beacons that activate automatically upon immersion. The combination of precise navigation, predictive weather science, constant monitoring, and resilient engineering has created a formidable shield against the unknown. So we must ask a pivotal and perhaps sobering question. Was the Devil's Sea ever a supernatural zone, or was it primarily a mystery born from human limitation confronting a supremely dangerous stretch of ocean? The dramatic decline in unexplained disappearances since the widespread adoption of these technologies points strongly toward the latter. The dragons have not retreated. We have simply built better lanterns to see the real monsters, the storms, the currents, and the shaking earth for what they truly are. But the legend refused to be confined to dusty maritime logs. The Devil's Sea escaped the pages of scientific reports and Charles Berlitz's books to find a vibrant, enduring life in the world of fiction. It became a versatile and powerful backdrop, a ready-made setting where the ordinary rules of reality could be suspended. In Japanese anime and manga, the Dragon's Triangle is a recurring character in its own right. Perhaps its most famous appearance is in the global phenomenon Dragon Ball. Here, the triangle is not just a dangerous stretch of water, it is the home of Master Roshi, the turtle hermit, who lives on a tiny, remote island within its bounds. For the heroes seeking his training, the journey itself is a perilous trial, filled with sea monsters and unpredictable storms that mirror the region's legendary hazards. This portrayal cemented the idea for a generation of fans that the Devil's Sea was a place of ancient masters and hidden power, a zone where the mythical and the modern collide. Beyond anime, the triangle has surfaced in numerous video games, often as a high-level exploration zone or a dungeon location. Role-playing games might place a sunken city of a lost civilization within its depths, guarded by spectral dragons or haunted by the ghosts of vanished crews. Survival horror games use it as the perfect setting for a derelict ship adrift in silent fog, where the monster is not just a creature, but the oppressive, disorienting mystery of the sea itself. In these digital worlds, the Devil's Sea provides a pre-loaded atmosphere of dread and wonder, saving developers the need to build a haunted backstory from scratch. The legend does all the heavy lifting. Hollywood, too, has dipped its toes into these treacherous waters, though often blending the lore of the Devil's Sea with its Atlantic cousin. Disaster films and supernatural thrillers might feature a research vessel, much like the ill-fated Kaiyo Maru No. 5, venturing into the triangle to investigate strange energy readings, only to awaken an ancient entity or trigger a dimensional rift. The common thread in all these portrayals is the function of the Devil's Sea as a plot device. It is a narrative shortcut to the unknown. When a writer needs a place where ships disappear, where technology fails, and where ancient evils can plausibly sleep, the Dragon's Triangle is a perfect, pre-approved location on the cultural map. Its use in media performs a fascinating alchemy. It takes the chilling, factual kernel of real disappearances and seismic danger and transmutes it into pure story fuel. This constant recycling in films, books, and games does something profound. It keeps the myth breathing long after oceanographers have moved on. For every person who has read a technical paper on methane hydrates, thousands have piloted a virtual submarine through a pixelated version of the Dragon's Triangle or watched a hero battle a storm demon there. This cultural afterlife ensures the Devil's Sea remains in the public imagination, a place of active mystery rather than a solved case. The waves on screen may be computer-generated and the dragons may be animated, but the shiver of recognition they evoke is rooted in a very old, very real fear of the deep. The most compelling supernatural claims dissolve under a clear-eyed, systematic review. Take the cornerstone of the legend, the idea that an impossible number of ships and planes vanish here without a trace. Skeptics like researcher Larry Kush, who famously dismantled the mythology of the Bermuda Triangle, would ask a simple, devastating question: compared to what? The Devil's Sea is not a quiet pond. It is one of the most heavily trafficked and aggressively fished stretches of ocean on Earth. With thousands of vessels crossing its waters each year, some losses are a tragic statistical certainty, not an anomaly. When investigators actually track down the original reports behind many famous vanishings, the stories often change. A ship lost in a typhoon that contemporary weather records confirm was a monster storm becomes a disappearance in calm seas. A vessel that sent a garbled distress call about taking on water is later remembered as having vanished in silent mystery. This isn't deception, it is the natural evolution of a story where ordinary tragedy is polished into paranormal legend by retelling. The pattern of silent radios is another pillar of the supernatural argument, yet the plausible explanations are numerous and mundane. A sudden capsizing from a rogue wave or a catastrophic hull breach from seismic shock would leave no time for a mayday. A crew overcome by a sudden release of volcanic gas would fall unconscious before reaching the transmitter. Even simple electrical failure from a lightning strike or flooding would sever that lifeline instantly. The silence is terrifying, but it is not evidence of magic, it is evidence of speed and finality. Then there are the spinning compasses and failing electronics, classic hallmarks of a paranormal zone. We now know the seafloor here is littered with volcanic rock holding fossilized magnetic signatures, creating local anomalies that can deflect a compass needle. This is a measurable, chartable fact of navigation, not a supernatural event. As for the strange lights often reported, from glowing grids beneath the waves to eerie glows in the fog, these too have rational candidates. Bioluminescent organisms can create vast, shimmering fields. Seismic activity can generate piezoelectric effects where stressed rock creates faint electrical charges. The dense, sudden fogs themselves can bend and scatter light from a ship's own lamps or distant sources into bizarre, looming shapes. The human mind, stressed and lost in a white void, is a powerful engine for seeing patterns where none exist. When we apply the skeptical method championed by investigators like Kush, a consistent picture emerges. Start with the simplest explanation, not the most sensational. Verify the original facts, don't rely on second-hand retellings. Compare the incident rate to similar regions with the same traffic volume and natural hazards. By these standards, the Devil's Sea stands out not for its paranormal activity, but for its concentration of some of the most formidable natural forces on the planet. The conclusion is both sobering and liberating. This stretch of ocean is dangerously, lethally volatile. Its geology is violent, its weather is explosive, and its currents are relentless. But in that terrifying reality, there is no need to invent dragons, aliens, or dimensional rifts. The truth is frightening enough. The sea here needs no curse to be deadly. It comes by that reputation honestly, through the raw, untamed power of the earth itself. Perhaps the most telling clue lies not in the ocean, but in ourselves. We cling to the legend of the Devil's Sea because on some fundamental level we want it to be true. In a world meticulously charted by satellites and explained by science, a genuine mystery feels like a rare and precious gift. It represents a frontier, a blank spot on the map of human understanding where our imagination is still free to roam. The romance of a lost ship swallowed whole without a trace speaks to a deep-seated yearning for adventure and the sublime terror of nature's raw, unanswerable power. It is a story that feels epic in its tragedy, far more compelling than a simple report of a hull breach in a storm. This is the same psychological engine that fuels our fascination with Atlantis, the Loch Ness Monster, or the abandoned ruins of forgotten cities. These tales are not failures of logic, they are triumphs of narrative. They provide a shared campfire in the dark, a collective shiver that reminds us the world still holds shadows we have not yet illuminated. They fulfill a profound human need for wonder, for a sense that just beyond the edge of the known, something astonishing might still be waiting. The Devil's Sea endures because it offers a perfect vessel for that need, a real place with real dangers, generously layered with centuries of haunting folklore. It allows us to be afraid in a safe way, to contemplate the abyss from the solid ground of our own lives, and to marvel at the fact that, even now, the deep blue can keep a secret. So the truth of the Devil's Sea lies in this very tension between the measurable violence of the earth and the boundless creativity of the human mind. We have a place of profound and very real danger, a stretch of ocean where the seafloor shatters and heaves, where currents run like freight trains, and where storms are born with terrifying speed. These forces can and have destroyed ships with a swiftness that leaves no time for a final message, scattering wreckage across a dark and mountainous abyss. This is the documented geological truth of the Dragon's Triangle. Yet layered atop this truth is a magnificent story, a centuries-old legend of dragons and ghost ships, of alien bases and dimensional tiers. That story is not a lie, but a different kind of truth, a testament to our need to narrate the unnarratable, to give a face to a formless terror. The Devil's Sea is hazardous not because it defies the laws of physics, but because it embodies them with such ruthless intensity. The mystery persists not because evidence is lacking, but because the clean, silent finality of its tragedies feels, on a deeply human level, unnatural. We are pattern-seeking creatures, and a perfect blank is the most unsettling pattern of all. So we fill it. We populate the depths with dragons because a monster is something we can comprehend, even fear, in a way that a random bubble of methane or a silent seismic slip is not. In the end, the enduring legend of the Devil's Sea reveals something fundamental, not about the Pacific but about us. It shows that our greatest mysteries are often mirrors, reflecting back our own awe, our fear of the unknown, and our timeless desire for a world where magic, even dark magic, might still linger just beyond the horizon. The real dragons were never in the sea. They were in the stories we told to make its depths feel knowable. And perhaps in a world fully explained, that is the most precious mystery of all. This leaves us with a final, open question for you. Where does your belief fall in this ancient debate between dragon and data? After everything we have explored, do you see the Devil's Sea as a place where the rules of our world still bend, where something genuinely unexplained lingers in the deep trenches? Or has science, with its charts of seismic faults and methane vents, fully illuminated the shadows where the legends once lived? I am genuinely curious to hear your perspective. Share your verdict in the comments below. Tell me whether you side with the ancient fishermen or the modern oceanographers. If you found this journey into one of history's great maritime mysteries compelling, consider subscribing. Our channel is dedicated to unearthing the truth behind the world's most enduring enigmas, from lost cities to forgotten artifacts, and your support helps us dive deeper into the archives of the unexplained. Thank you for watching, and until next time, remember, the greatest mysteries are not always those that remain unsolved, but those we choose to keep questioning.